Don't look now, but it's a whole new world of weed out there. Pot is flower, it's Bruce Banner and Blue Dream. You've got bongs and dabs, resin and shatter, vaping and edibles, new terms, new strains, and new ways to use cannabis sativa, the plant. Some just made with CBD, and hemp has minimal THC. There's sativa and indica strains, and 100 chemicals, all legal in 10 states for adult use. There's a lot to get to know. Get used to it, folks, because it's legal in the Bay State and it's not going away. Neither is In the Weeds with Jimmy Young next. Revolutionary Clinics is just one of 49 medical cannabis dispensaries in Massachusetts, but there's a reason why it's one of the most popular. It's their patient-first philosophy. All day long, they teach, they educate, they communicate about this complicated plant called cannabis sativa. That's true whether you visit their Cambridge location in Fresh Pond at 110 Fawcett Street or at 67 Broadway in Somerville. Revolutionary Clinics, where the patient comes first.
I'm excited to talk with him because I am a sufferer of arthritis, and that is how I got my medical marijuana card. Seth Ginsberg is the executive of the Global Healthy Living Foundation, and he just released a study entitled Patients' Perceptions and the Use of Medical Marijuana. He's also the co-founder and president of one of the great named companies of all time, Creaky Joints. Seth Ginsberg, welcome to We Talk Live with Jimmy Young and Curt, Dalton, and Dan McCarthy's with us too.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Good. We're having an interesting discussion here, and it continues with you. Tell us a little bit about, first of all, Creaky Joints, because I just love the title of that group.
Sure. So Creaky Joints is an online patient community focused on education, support, advocacy, and research for people and their families suffering from the more than 100 different types of arthritis. Arthritis, as you know, is the leading cause of disability in the United States. And I've actually had arthritis since I was a little boy. I was diagnosed at age 13. And so I grew up as a teenager, kind of coming of age, and I was actually a first-year student up in Massachusetts at Babson College when I was in my dorm room bunk bed, staring at the coils above me, wondering, where is everyone else going through something like this? And this being the 90s at the time, I had gotten out of bed and emailed my former internship boss, and in one sentence said, there's got to be a way to bring people together in a positive environment where we can share strength and experience. And fortunately, he wrote back the next day that he'd like to become a social entrepreneur, and we ought to do this together. And that afternoon, Creaky Joints became a website and remains one to this day, 20 years later, creakyjoints.org, which we then folded into what became the Global Healthy Living Foundation, the official nonprofit umbrella organization with the mission to improve access to care for people with all chronic diseases.
Okay, and this is where I get to show my gross fingers on camera. Okay, this is my osteoarthritis.
This is not a rated R show. There's kids watching.
Sorry. So, Seth, needless to say, it's hereditary. I've had it for a long time. 4 major surgeries in 20 years. Needless to say, that qualified me for a medical marijuana card when the program first started. I take Charlotte's Web CBD oil every morning with my turmeric and orange juice, and when I run out of it, my fingers ache. So I know it works. You just came off a study where you identified 57% of arthritis patients have reported trying CBD and or a combination with THC and without. And there's tons of stuff we can talk about that. Tell us a little bit about this study, though.
Yeah, sure. So we have a patient-powered research network called Arthritis Power. It's a free web and mobile app for people with arthritis and enables them to track how they're doing, track their outcomes, as well as participate in patient-centered studies that we conduct. And one of the more recent studies we conducted was actually derived in part by our patient governors. This is a governing body of the research registry, and they created a study for measuring patients' perceptions and their use and experiences with medical marijuana. And so we surveyed close to 1,100 people, 1,059 actually people, and found, as you mentioned, that 57% of those folks had either tried medical marijuana or CBD products for medical reasons. And of interest as well is that of those who use marijuana regularly, 62% use it every day. So it sounds a lot like what you were just saying. There are lots of caveats, and with a smart audience like yours, it's important to note that this is a study with great limitation. There's something called bias in terms of the cohort, the people that were selected themselves to be a part of this, and this was clearly and simply self-reported and observational and individualized. This is not clinical data. This is not randomized clinical trial data, which is the information gathered from studies that are conducted about, treatments pertaining to, managing chronic diseases, or any for that matter. These clinical trials are not, as you noted earlier, possible right now due to the federal scheduling of marijuana and CBD, and therefore we don't have data from a clinical standpoint as to the effects of these products on things like arthritis and other chronic diseases. And that's the main message. That's kind of the big takeaway from our study, and I'm happy to get into a lot more of the details, but the essence is so many people are medicating with these products. So many people are medicating regularly, and of those finding there to be great relief in their symptoms, and therefore we need a more adult approach, as I like to say, toward research of marijuana and CBD in a randomized clinical trial environment, in one where we have academicians in universities as well as industries that are all working together to research and understand these products, and then present it to regulators like the Food and Drug Administration. None of that is occurring right now, as you know.
Yeah.
And so, we're lacking a lot. And this is our main advocacy message, obviously, in terms of, begging for more structured and more evidence-based research about these products, so that nobody, yourself included, should be the guinea pig, should be the people with, the anecdotal evidence. You're an N of one, as they say. It's just you saying that's your relief from that product. So let's blow the doors open now, and let medical science and research and academicians, as well as industry, have at it, so we can really raise the bar and both learn more as well as apply those learnings through the literature with guidance for how to treat these diseases using products like these. But without any data, none of that's going to happen. It's all a proverbial pipe dream for now.
Seth, Curt, Cannabis.net. I'm looking at a picture of you on the big screen, and you're a very handsome man. You look way too young to have arthritis, and you had mentioned you had it as a child and as a kid. How do you feel about youth, younger people, in their teens, if it's for a medical condition, using it? Are you a pro? Yeah, if a 13 or 14-year-old kid has arthritis at this level, I'm for it? Or kind of what's your stance on that, having it so young?
Yeah, so this is where I clearly disclose I'm not a doctor, and so I'm definitely not qualified to give a medical answer to that. However, I do know how to read, and I do spend an awful lot of time researching this subject and similar subjects. It's the nature of what I do, and I can say that my caution, my concern is, children are in development. And, there's variance in what folks say between 21 and 25 is the age until which, the brain isn't fully formed, frankly. And drugs like marijuana, again, absent any qualitative and clinical evidence, but with some degree of understanding as to its impact and what it does to folks, to the brain, to the mind, is something that would concern me. I'm a parent, and I obviously will, do my part to prevent my child from, having access to marijuana anytime, at least while she's living in my house. Specifically because she's still in development, specifically because children's minds and brains don't fully form. And again, there are many more qualified experts, neurologists, pediatric neurologists, pediatricians who also feel very strongly. In fact, that's probably one of your bigger dissenting voices or, opposing viewpoints with respect to proliferation and legalization of marijuana. And that's the harm it can cause on the youth and the not fully formed brain. And so, I think we have to take that into serious consideration. And then, of course, we have to carve out the exemptions, and there unfortunately always are terrible cases that children suffer from rare diseases and other very impairing conditions for which there might be relief from marijuana. But absent those exceptions, I would very strongly caution folks with respect to children, teenagers, even young adults with respect to marijuana and CBD.
Now, it's interesting you say that, because one of the little factoids that we've been putting up as we go to breaks is actually reporting on a recent study of teenagers, I think thousands of teenagers from the 1980s, and they were separated into regular users, moderate users, occasional users, and never users. And then they were retested in their 30s. And what they concluded in this study was it didn't affect the development of their brain from teen to adult. And again, this was, again, it's not a clinical trial. It's an anecdotal stories, but these types of studies are being done now. And I certainly respect what you're saying as an adult and as a parent. But again, a lot of this stuff, and Dan McCarthy, I know you feel the same way, gets really, I don't want to say blown out of proportion, but it feeds off the stigma a little bit, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. I mean, look, one of the biggest things that is going to propel this industry and the onboarding of the new understanding of something that has been categorically prohibited, but presented in orchestrated misinformation for years. I mean, like the stigmata that exists with it, whether you're looking at it in a generational sense or whether you're looking at it in a cultural sense, whether you're looking at it in sort of like, I mean, you can't even look at it in the scientific sense because there is no data. That's what we're always talking about now, right? Because of the restrictions on federal research. The fact that re-education has been something that has probably been one of the most, like the highest spikes in the change, in the real paradigm shift in how cannabis is being perceived. Look at any Gallup poll right now versus 2 years ago. You're seeing insane spikes in the fact that more than usually between 60 and 70% of people in a national Gallup poll on just the general idea of, without qualifiers, saying like, are you for legalization or maintaining prohibition, right? You like, let's say it's like 75, 78%, something, right? Then usually that's why you want to start getting down to those different questions. Some people might say, I am totally for legalization. I'm not for commercialization. Some people might say I'm for legalization, but only for medicinal use. Right. Some people may say I'm for legalization, but you know what? I've noticed everybody's smoking it outside and I smell it all the time. And now I'm ticked off. Like there's all these different factions in this conversation. Seth,
you've mentioned marijuana and CBD in the same breath. We all recognize that there's a hemp product that does not have THC in it, or at least up to 0.3% THC. That is out there. The Farm Bill made it legal, and now it's going to be a crop and a commodity and traded and all this neat stuff. But the entourage effect that says you need a little THC to really get the most benefits out of the CBD. Where do you stand as far as that theory goes, those anecdotal stories, and do you recognize the differences, obviously, between the two products there?
Yeah, So while I don't have an official position to share here, I'm conscious of the potential that hemp has for our society with multiple applications as a renewable resource for manufacturing and through the multiple methods with which extraction processes could net helpful particulates. So I'm I think the Farm Bill was a really good step in the right direction. I think that, we have the opportunity to, continue our country's great legacy of farming quality products and adding hemp to that, or adding, I should say, hemp to that list, I think is a net good thing. But we, I don't think we're even at the tip of the iceberg for the potential and the proliferation and opportunity that it presents to our society.
Absolutely. Seth Ginsberg, I want to tell you thank you very much for coming on and joining us a little bit here. Dan obviously has to get the final word in.
No. I just want to say, Seth, on a personal note, Creaky Joints would make an excellent band name.
Great. Well, you know what? Membership is free. Check it out, creakyjoints.org. You sound like a great member to be. I'd welcome your involvement in our community. No, seriously, Dan,
I love it. No, I love everything you talked about.
And it's all made available for free, and we're thankful to our sponsors for that, of course. But I'm glad to have joined you this evening. Appreciate the important dialogue. Do want to caution parents and their children around marijuana. But I also, at the same time, look forward to much more clinical evidence and literature and guidance from the medical and scientific community. That's what we're on the tip of the spear driving toward, and conversations like this are really important, moving that in that direction.
Well, thank you very much, Seth Ginsberg. Appreciate it, from the Global Healthy Living Foundation and, of course, Creaky Joints. That was Seth.
Revolutionary Clinics is just one of 49 medical cannabis dispensaries in Massachusetts, but there's a reason why it's one of the most popular. It's their patient-first philosophy. All day long, they teach, they educate, they communicate about this complicated plant called cannabis sativa. That's true whether you visit their Cambridge location in Fresh Pond at 110 Fawcett Street or at 67 Broadway in Somerville. Revolutionary Clinics, where the patient comes first. In the Weeds with Jimmy Young is a production of the Pro Cannabis Media Group for the education and information of our listening audience. The opinions on this podcast are strictly those of the hosts of the program and do not represent Pro Cannabis Media or any of its affiliates. No medical advice is given, and any use of cannabis should be by adults over the age of 21 and used responsibly.